All right, so we're going to pick it up from last time where we were talking about PHP. In particular, we ended it by talking about associative arrays in PHP. Remember, PHP doesn't technically have actual arrays. It has, I mean, you can treat them like arrays, like zero indexed arrays where all the keys are integers 0 through n minus 1. And if you add things to the end of an array, it'll use the next available index. But otherwise, you can actually treat them like a full associative array where you're actually using either integers or you're using strings as keys, and then you can map it to whatever you want. You can have mixed types in here. So you can have some of the values are strings, some of the values are floating point numbers, some of the values are integers, etc. And ultimately, because of this, you can use this variety of keys and values. Generally, you use a for each loop when iterating over elements in an associative array. And the easiest, simplest syntax for doing that is simply just for each, then the array, the name of the array that you've got, as, and then a key, and then the arrow operator here, or the arrow symbol with the equal sign, and then the greater sign as a right-facing arrow, right? Value, and then you can have the key and the value, and it automatically iterates over it for you. Of course, there's no guarantee on the order that it's going to go in, because again, under the hood, it's all just a hash map. Okay. So to continue there, you also have available to you command line arguments. And for those command line arguments, it's very similar to C, that you have this variable called argc is the number of arguments, right? And you also have this variable called argv, right? Because there is no main method or main function that you define, these are automatically part of the scope from a command line invocation of PHP. They just exist, period. argv is a zero indexed array of arguments. And like C and unlike Java, argv sub 0 is the script name, right? So, for example, let me go ahead and come over here, and I'll just print out the number of arguments is %d and the line, and I'll use printf for this. argc, excuse me, that's the number of arguments. The first argument is going to be in argv sub 0, right? So remember, if you've got a variable, right? If I've got like a is equal to 10, I can go ahead and print that out within a string like this. A is equal to %a, and it will automatically, put in the value of a for me. So let's see this in action before I use the argument vector here. PHP demo. Right? Remember that we are online, so if you have any questions, go ahead and put them onto Piazza, or you can use the YouTube chat. So the number of arguments is 1. Why? Well, because demo PHP, that's the script name. And you'll note here that A has been coerced. It's been the value has been dumped to this value right here. But if we tried to do the same thing with an array, it wouldn't work. argv sub 0. Let me just go ahead and print that out as it is. I don't know if, hopefully this will be a warning. If it's not, it's certainly not going to be what we want. Oh, it is. Darn it. Okay. That's because I've got two things here. So let's go with I is equal to 0. And let's try to put that in here, I. This probably won't work because I've got two variables. I've got one index variable, and then I've got one actual array variable here. Oh, no, it did work. Okay. All right. Good job, PHP. In old school PHP, you wouldn't be able to do something like this. Anyway, argv sub 0. Let me go ahead and put in 0 there. argv sub 1. Now, what's going to happen if I don't provide that command line argument? If there's only one command line argument and I try to print out the second one, that's like accessing an index or an array element that doesn't exist. So let's find out what happens here. All right. First of all, there's a notice. I don't know that it actually was a fatal error here because I can go ahead and printf end of program, right? Or end of script, and it'll actually get there and print the end of the program. So what was it doing? It's just giving you a notice, a warning that that doesn't exist. I see a blank line here. Guess what that is? Arg equals. What's it printing? Nothing. Why? Because null, when you change null into a string, it's going to be the empty string, right? It's not going to print out the keyword null or anything like that. It's going to just not print anything. And of course, this is just a notice. It's a warning. You can shut off all warnings, and this wouldn't even appear. Right? All right, so let's go ahead and go into a loop and print out every single element in the argument vector. For that, I'm going to go ahead and use that for each loop that we introduced last time. For each argv as the index mapping to the argument, printf argv sub %d is equal to %s and the line, and it'll be index and then arg. There we go. There's the first command line argument, which is always going to be the script file name, A, B, C. How many arguments are there now? 4. And it'll print out A, B, C, right? What if I added 10, 20, and 30? Now 7 of them, are those integers or what? Well, right now they are strings because I'm coercing them into strings. If I wanted to convert them over to integers, what would I use? Remember that? If I wanted to convert like the fourth one, so x is equal to a to I would be an alias to it. I think it's int val is what it's an alias to. If I wanted to convert it to an integer of argv sub, say 4, right? If I wanted a double val, or float val, I think that those are two aliases of the same thing, argv sub 5. And of course, you can do basic command line argument checking, how many arguments were you given, etc. Okay? So I'll go ahead and put that into the notes so that you have it. There we go. You can also do basic file IO. So we've done standard output. You can do standard input, but you're not going to have cause to reading in directly. Please enter an integer. You sit there and you mash the keyboard and enter an integer. Instead, we're going to look at file IO by itself. So what are the 3 basic steps? What? Open a file. Yep. Process it. And what do you do in the end? Close it. Guess what? If you know C, you know how to do this already, right? What are you going to use to open a file? Open, exactly. Now, fopen takes a file name and then a mode. So data.txt, and the mode I'll be opening it for is reading. Okay, fine. This h here, I'm using the variable h as that's short for handle. It returns in C, it would return a file pointer. And then you would advance that pointer by reading line after line or character after character or something like that. Here, it's just a file handle. It is an internal, it's basically a file pointer, but it's an internal object that PHP handles for you, right? So let's see. If h, right? You can do truthy things. If h, in other words, it was successful, printf opened file. Otherwise, it will return something that is falsy. It'll return null. And so you can send it printf didn't open for some reason. Now, are we going to be able to open a data.txt file here for reading? I don't see such a file. Let's try it out. Demo. Right. There, didn't open, and of course I get a warning here. Failed to open string, no such file or directory. Okay. Well, what would happen if we tried to open a file that didn't belong to us? Say the Etsy shadow file. No seg faults here because it's an interpreter. but it's probably the same thing here. So PHP demo failed to open file, but permission denied here with a different error message. Why? Because that's where the passwords are stored. Cannot open that. If you wanted to open the Etsy password file, which is misnamed for historic reasons, you can open that just fine. Why? Because there's nothing of consequence in there at all, right? There's just user information, okay? So opening it, what do you think to close it though? For close, exactly, and you give it H, right? Whether or not you successfully opened it. So let me go ahead and go back here and say that this is in the current this is the current directory, and we're going to open up a data.txt file. Well, fine. I'll need to make sure that it exists first. Data.txt. There we go. Let's put something in there. This is line 1, 2, 3. Can't call it blank. Above is blank. There we go. Another blank, and then end. Right? There we go. So there are 7 lines here. How do I process it line by line after I've successfully opened it? fgetS, exactly. Now, fgetS, file, get string. You had to be careful because you read it into a buffer. That buffer needed to be big enough, right? And and the way that you limited the buffer was by specifying fget's only read in a certain number of bytes, so that it doesn't overrun that buffer. And then you need to make sure to put that it takes care of that null terminating character, so it's always -1, right? Do we have to worry about any of that stuff with PHP? No, because we don't have to worry about null terminating characters. We don't have to worry about memory management. If I want a line, go ahead and get a line. Fget's. Right? You don't need to specify a buffer. You don't need to specify a size. You just need to specify your file handle, and that's it. Right? Yeah.
You need to check for it, like make sure you don't get to the end of the file.
Good. We'll get into a loop here in a second. I just want to print out one line, right? And then let me go ahead and printf end of program and the line. There we go. So let's go ahead and run this now, and it'll print line. This is line 1. It has a blank line here. Why? Because I put the end line character here, but also in the original file, what was at the end right here? An end line character. So in other words, just like C, it retains the end line character for you. What if you wanted to chomp that out? You wanted to get rid of it. Chomp? I don't know if PHP, does PHP have a chomp? Say, what is it? It should be trim, rtrim. Rtrim, there's also an ltrim. They call it chop, not chomp. I don't know why. But it's an alias of rightmost trim, so it'll remove all trailing, all white space that's on the right side of the string. In other words, all trailing white space. Is there a C also, ltrim? Yes, there is. And also, there's another trim that cuts out both prepended white space and appended, there we go, appended white space. So if you want to, you can go ahead and trim out the entire thing. And now when I run this again, that blank line is not going to be there because the original end line character has been chomped out. Oops. Semicolon. There we go. Okay. Now, to your point, how do I know when I'm at the end of the file? Let's go into a while loop. While you have not reached the end of the file, now normally I would check, if this were like a fgetC, I would be checking for EOF, end of file. If this were a while loop with fget's, I would be capturing the return value and then checking for null to see if I'm at the end of the file. For this one, there's a special function, FEOF. What do you think that stands for? File, end of file, because we need more F's in there. Right? There we go. While it's not at the end of the file, what do? Read a line, chomp it out, print it, and be done. And this is going to print the entire file right here. As you're reading them in, if it's a CSV data, you can go ahead and process it, split it out, preg split it out, You can explode it. You can do whatever you want with it. Right? Cool. Now replace it all with the one line of code. Yeah.
So the trim thing, if the line itself is blank, it doesn't trim it.
Yeah, it doesn't change the original. No,
Okay.
it returns a new string. So returns the modified. It does change it. It looks like. I should RTM. Read the documentation.
Okay.
Strip white space or characters from the end of the string. It'll also return the actual string, so that you can reuse it, I suppose. It returns a string with white space stripped to the end. That's kind of ambiguous. So yes, read the documentation, but then scratch your head when it's poorly written. So let's test.
Okay.
Space, hello, space. And we'll say that t is equal to trim of s, and then we'll see if they're the same thing. Printf, I'll put strokes around it so that we're absolutely sure that there is white space or not white space. Huh. Liar. This function return the input returns the modified string. It returns a new string that is modified. rewrite your documentation there. It does not change the original. That's why you need to capture the value.
Okay.
And by the way, as a preview of what we're going to do here, I could have told that by looking at the declaration here. It is not passed by reference. It is passed by value. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. And if the line itself is blank, like you have there, does it not trim the line?
So if the line is blank, like there's just this,
Yeah.
I mean, it'll trim all white space. So
Okay.
there, this, it was originally preserved. So you've got the stroke, then the end line, then the stroke. But here it took out the entire thing. So it'll remove, like it says, it'll remove anything that's a white space, a space, a tab, a new character, carriage returns, null bytes, and vertical tabs. Okay. So all that I just showed you, guess what? File get contents. All right, data.txt, and you're done. Printf contents. I think that this will work. Yep, there we go. End of program. There's no end line character at the last line because, well, there's no end line character here. Put one there, and you get one here. All right. So, one line of code. Cool? Yeah, go ahead.
Contents, that's an array of string.
It is one big giant string. If you want to change it out, what could you do? If I want lines is equal to preg split contents, and then what is the preg? Oops. Find preg split. I can't do it over here. I can't do a search and find over here. There it is. So preg split, and we'll do end line characters on contents. Actually, it'd be easier to do an explode on this since it's just one character, but this is how you would do it with the preg split, and then print r lines. I might need to escape that backslash. Let's find out here. There we go. I did not need to escape that backslash, excuse me. So there's the fancy way of doing it. Here's the nitty-gritty way of doing it. Lines is equal to explode contents, and then an end-line character. I think that's the order. Let's find out. No, it is not. It is reversed. There. That's the easy way of doing it. Okay. So that's file input. What about file output? Well, what do you need to do? Handle or output file or whatever you want. I'll just go ahead and go with H here. You need to open it. open. I don't know, other data.txt, right? And if you don't have permission to open it and create a file there, if the file obviously does not exist, but it'll be created for you if you open it. If it already existed, you would be overwriting the contents of the file just like you would in C. And if you don't have permission to create files in that directory, then you'd be screwed. It would be, return null or whatever. Once you've got it open, then you can start dumping to it. Guess what? Fprintf. You want to print to the file any data, hello world, and the line. And you want to, and here I don't have any format, but if you want to, you can put in formatting 3.14. So fprintf and then percent 0.2 20f and a, and then make sure that you close at the end. When you run this, oops. Oh, you're right. Thank you. Undefined variable in line 10. Oh, that's because I didn't do this. There. Well, in any case, the other code worked just fine. There's my 20 decimals of pi. Obviously, it gets into garbage after the 17 decimal points of accuracy, and you're just printing garbage at that point. Right? Or, you know what? I don't like that. Let's just do a one-liner. So if I've got message is equal to hello world, how are you? And I go through and concatenate a bunch of stuff. I get this just one string that I want to dump to a file. Well, if I could do get the entire contents of a file with one line, file get contents, file, what's the opposite of get? Give, or put, put contents. And here you would give it the new file.txt and then the contents, I think, MSG. Let's find out. I don't want to file put contents PHP, of course. What's the order? I forget. File name and then the data that you want to put to it. So I did it right. Excellent. PHP demo. There we go. And there's the new file with hello world, how are you in it. All dumped at once. You don't have to open it and close it. It does everything for you. Question online. PHP has some CSV functions too that will do the file IO and parse lines and do arrays. Yes. All you need to do is search out in documentation, PHP CSV processing. PHP CSV. There you go. Yeah.
So if you were to use file put contents again on the same file, would it just overwrite?
It would clobber every. It's just a technical term. Clobber everything in the file. Yep. Yep. MSG is equal to new message. There is a way that you can append it instead. I think file PHP file append to a file. I don't know why would you go to a Java point to read about PHP stuff, but anyway, you'd open it for appending. I thought that there was a one-liner to do it though, and I'm pretty sure that there's a one-liner to do it. I've used it before, but I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. But if I did it this way, then of course I would be overwriting the file entirely. Save. All right, new file.txt. There it is, new message. All right. I got to be careful because my quick key to close a tab, Control W, that closes the browser tab in the CS50 IDE, and we'd be starting over. All right, so there is the file. There's how you can do file IO in PHP. All right. I don't know why it's not making it look all pretty, but this made it look pretty. Oh, probably because I'm not technically in PHP mode, I'm not copying those tags. Right. But it doesn't matter if it looks pretty or not. All right. So one of the next item would be functions. You can declare a function using the, who would have guessed it, function keyword. Right. You can declare it anywhere. However, and this is a big however, function names are case insensitive. Weird. Why? I have no idea. Java, you could, initially I always blamed it on JavaScript. The fact that you embed something in, that HTML is case insensitive, and so if you used a tag of some sort to invoke a JavaScript function, but that's not the case because JavaScript is case sensitive, right? Anybody in JavaScript? No? JavaScript is case sensitive on its, I believe it is. Well, here. Let's not believe, is JavaScript case sensitive functions names. Yes, JavaScript is case sensitive, at least for this. At least there's one answer is saying it. Function name. Yep. Person. I believe that it is case sensitive. But HTML is not case sensitive. So my best guess for why functions are case insensitive in PHP is because it has something to do with HTML and its influence. But in any case, let's go ahead and define a function called foo. Or let's go, I don't know, sum. Right? A, B, and C. Now, what are A, B, and C? Are they integers? Are they doubles? Are they're whatever you want them to be? Because it is a dynamically typed language. Now, PHP 7 introduced what's called static typing or strong typing. It is still not as static or as strong as Java or C or something like that. You can do stuff like this and declare it to be an integer, but by default, it's shut off. You actually, on every single file that you want to use something like this, where it forces it to be an integer, you would need to go in and explicitly set strict typing or strong typing, whichever one it is, to be true for every single file that you do this in. All right. So I'm just telling you that because there is a way to do it, but so be it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take the sum. Total is equal to A plus B plus C. There we go. And I'll return the total. There we go. Actually, no. I forgot my return value. Let's find out what happens. X is equal to 10, Y is equal to 20, Z is equal to 30. Again, it is case insensitive. So if I want result to be sum X, Y, and Z, this will work. It will call that function. Maybe there will be a warning or something. I'm not sure. Nope, no warning. Obviously, it's not printf or print result. What's it going to print, by the way? Remember, I was dumb and I forgot my return statement. So it's not returning anything. What's the value of nothing? Nothing. Literally nothing. Not zero, right? Literally nothing. Null, because it's returning null. It's equivalent to this, return null, right? And then it's getting printed as a string. What's the and it's getting printed as the empty string. Question?
So in PHP, is the scope of the function visible to the rest of the program?
Yes. So the question was, what's the scope? It works perfectly fine even if it's declared after. The reason being is that the interpreter goes through a couple passes. The first pass it goes through identifies all the functions, and it does what's called hoisting. It hoists them up to whatever scope they were declared in. Now, if you declare them inside in another file, you have to include that file. If you declare them inside of a class, then it's scoped to that class. But in general, declaring a function like this puts it into the global namespace. Right? So sum, no difference here because it's case insensitive Even if it's declared afterwards, it's up there. Now, if you misspell it, then it doesn't know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Search kind of a little bit, and for the appending to a file.
Oh yeah, appending to a file?
Yeah, so you just add another argument at the end of your file post content.
Oh, okay.
Just put a comma and then all caps use file underscore append.
There you go. And I'm sure that there are several other modes that it supports, right? There are these flags right here. And what are the flags? File use include path, file append, file lock exclusive, so that you can get a file lock on it. That's where I probably used it before. In web app, of course, if you've got multiple users accessing the same file and you're storing stuff in a file, not a great solution, but PHP is not a great language. So you definitely want to make sure that it's synchronized and put a file lock on it so that if you're, for example, persisting greater tokens, I'd use this on the greater tokens that appear in your URL, we put those into a file and keep track of them so that we know if they've been timed out. And of course, if multiple users are all grading at the same time, you want to make sure that that file is not corrupted. And so you lock them out, and then so that only one person can access that file at once. All right? Anyway, sum works. Okay, now that I'm returning his value here, that works perfectly fine. Oops, I forgot. How many arguments does sum take? 3. What if I give it 2? Oh, now it's a fatal error. Argument counter exception. Too few arguments to this function. Pass 2. Right? That didn't used to be the case in PHP. It used to be that you that if you just in fact I could probably update this mode, but to like old school PHP, default values took over. If you did not provide, and this is an artifact of C too, if you did not provide this third value here, then it interpreted it as it was not provided, therefore null was provided. What is 10 plus 20 plus null? Null being converted into an integer, the value of null is 0, and so it should be 30. Right? New school PHP is treating this as a fatal error. That's okay, because we have plenty of functions that take 5 arguments, but sometimes you only have to pass in 1. For example, the one that you just pointed out, file get put contents, it takes 1, 2, 3, 4 arguments. But when I used it, I only provided 2. How is it able to do that? This syntax right here. This makes it into an optional argument. If you don't provide this 4th argument right here, then this explicit default value takes over. You can do that yourself. If you don't want to provide the 3rd value, an explicit default can take over. Right? 50. And now, when I only pass in 2 arguments, 10 and 20, the 3rd argument, the default takes over, and so it's 10, 20, and 50, and we call that 80, right? You can make, you can't do this though. This doesn't make logical sense. It's right to left. So if I only provide 1 argument, that argument is always going to be the first argument, A. In other words, not providing a default here means that B is a required argument with no default. It's kind of nonsense to have a default value here when there's no default value here. So the order of your arguments is important now, right? The most required, the least required. The most required, the most optional over here, right? And that's why these 2 are optional, but the first 2 are required for this particular function. Right? And I can make this into 50, or I can make this into null. And what happens now when I pass in, say, just 1 argument? 10, null, 50. 10 plus null plus 50 is 60. Right? Because 10 plus nothing, 0, plus 50. Right? All right, so that makes optional. Several languages support that, by the way. I believe that JavaScript also supports that. Supports optional function parameters like that. Another example, let's try to do the old school swap function. right? How do we swap two variables? Put one into a temporary variable, right? Put the other variable into the first variable, and put the temporary variable back into the second variable, and then return. There's no return value here. All right? This is A and B. This is X, Y. Swap X and Y. All right? And print X, or percent D, and the line. I'll print X and print Y. And I'll print it before and after print F. Excuse me. There we go. So before, obviously, it should print out 10 and 20. After, is it going to print 10 and 20? 10 and 20 still. That tells you something.
Only because you had a typo in the copy.
Oh. I did what?
I don't know which line you wanted to do on 5 or 6, but you just said to me.
B into A, and then A I take into temp, right? No, I take A and put it in temp so I can put B into A, and then B takes on temp. There we go. Good? All right. Same result. Oh. Should print. Come on. Save. There we go. I don't know what was going on there. But same result. What does that tell you about how parameters are passed in PHP? By reference or by value? By value, right? 10 and 20 copies of those variables are given to the function. Yes, they're swapped inside the function. Before, this is going to be A and B. And I will make a distinction here in the function. That's before. That's after. You will see them swapped. Oops, come on. Save. All right, that's what the problem is. It's really, really slow and not saving here on the CS50 IDE. Come on. File. Save. Come on, really? All right. Copy, just to make sure. IDE. I have copied it, so we're not going to lose anything. There we go. There. It was swapped inside the function, but that's because A and B are distinct separate variables. X and Y are not the same variables. Right? So in C, what was our solution with dealing with that? Pointers passing by reference. So if I were to do that in C, what would it look like? It would be like int star A, pass by reference. In PHP, to designate something as pass by reference, it's just the opposite. What's the opposite of star? Ampersand. Weird, weird. All right? Those are pass by reference. Now check out the behavior. After the function x and y are swapped. I don't provide ampersands down here when I pass it in. I just specify that these are passed by reference and it takes care of it for me. But it's the exact opposite of what you would expect. Right? Okay? Weird. Even weirder. Our pass by value versus reference. PHP. There we go. What about arrays? Let's go ahead and just get rid of all this. Function sum array. All right, so here's an array. And let's go ahead and sum up the values in that array for, all right, here's total is equal to 0. And for each array as key mapping to value, we'll say that total, and you can do compound assignment operators, plus equals value, and then return the value. In other words, I'm going to assume that this is an array of integers or an array of numbers or something like that, okay? Here's, how do I create an array again? The array function, right? And then I can add stuff to it, or you can initialize it immediately, 10, 20, and 30. There we go. and the sum is equal to sum array of ARR, and printf total is equal to %d and the line s. So 10, 20, 30, the sum there is, or 10, 20, 30. Oh, what did I screwed up somehow. Should be, what is going on? Mystery. Huh. There is something fishy going on there. Why would it be 30?
Oh, are you're returning the value,
Oh, thank you. I'm returning the value, which is this thing right here. What does that tell you about scoping? This thing has been scoped up to the function scope, even though it seems like it should be here at the at the loop level. All right, fine, whatever. Total. Thank you. Good eyes. 60. 30 was the last value that value took on, so that's why. Now it's what I expected, 60. What if I made changes to it though? Right? So let's go ahead and go through, and for I equals 0, I is less than count of A, I plus plus, plus plus. What if I said that A is of I is equal to A sub I, and I'm just going to add 1 here. You can do plus 1, by the way. So obviously, if I add 1 to 10, 20, and 30, I'll get 11, 21, and 31, so I would expect 63. But I'm making the changes inside this array, right? But in C, in Java, in most programming languages, arrays are passed by reference. So is it changed or not? Let's go ahead and find out. Printf, or print R, ARR, before calling that function and after calling that function. Let's find out. If it's passed by value, or if it's passed by reference like every other language, right, then we should see a change. Before it would be 10, 20, and 30, and then after it would be 11, 21, and 31, but it's not. It's unchanged. What does that tell you about PHP and how it passes arrays? Passed by value. The entire thing, the entire array is copied and then passed on to the function. Right? Only if you have an ampersand is it passed by reference. Passed by value is the default for everything, including arrays. Now this will reflect the change. 11, 21, and 31. Exact opposite syntax of C, exact opposite behavior of C, right? So the C influence only goes so far. And then when you see, oh, C does it this way, I'm going to do it the exact opposite. So doing something the exact opposite is also influence in a way, I suppose, right? But anyway, there you go. Any questions so far? No? Then let's talk about exceptions. PHP does support exceptions and exception handling, but only one type. That's an exception. In Java, you have file not found exception. You have null pointer exception. You have index out of bounds exception. And you can try and catch each one of these individually, and there's a distinction. There's a semantic difference between any of them. But with PHP, there's only one exception, period. You can make your own exceptions, by the way, but since since PHP is dynamically typed, it really can't make a difference. It doesn't really make a difference between all those exceptions. What you need to do is you need to use the message being sent. So what I mean by that is, let's go ahead and try to do something dangerous, right? So in A is equal to 10, and then B is equal to 0, and then say that I wanted to do division by 0. A divided by B, right? This would obviously be division by 0. So before we do that, let's check. If the denominator, strict equality checking here, is 0, then I will throw an exception. Throw exception You cannot divide by 0. And the line, and sorry, it's new exception. New exception, there we go. Else, I'll go ahead and do this dangerous computation. Right? So what's going to happen here, because you're about to divide by 0, an exception is thrown with that error message right there on that, and it tells me what line it was thrown at. Right? Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, it'll open it and go to that line if you do that in the CS50 ID. Neat. Right? It's smart. Anyway, if it's not 0, then of course we can go ahead and safely do that, and we don't end up throwing an exception. Right? You can try, right? Instead of doing an explicit check here, you can try doing the dangerous thing, and then you can catch an exception. Let me check the syntax. Catch exception E, right? And then you can, I'm just going to grab this so I don't have to type it all. Print F, exception occurred. And you simply, you do all of your checking using the message that was actually thrown, because there really is no typing system because PHP is dynamically typed. Right? Got to get it right though. Right? So let's see. I don't even know if division by 0 would throw an exception by PHP. We'll find out. It looks like it. It looks like it might not have. Yeah, it doesn't end up throwing an exception. Why? Oh, did I? Thank you. Now let's see, before I go checking with other code. There we go. Uncaught exception, you cannot, oh, well that's from up here. Now let's find out if PHP does it. Yep, division by 0 on line 13. So it's throwing an exception, but that's a warning. That's not actually throwing an exception, right? Because I can go ahead and continue here with print OK. That OK will not be printed. That OK will be printed here because that's not an exception, right? If it were actually throwing an exception, control throw would go from line 13 down to the catch right here. So that's not an exception that that gets thrown. I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know an operation that would throw an explicit exception. Instead, everything in PHP is a PH warning or a PHP notice or a PHP fatal error. But you can do exceptions. You just can't do exception. You can do your own exception types, but usually it is some error message like this. Not only that, but again, guess what? Case insensitive. Right? Uncaught exception. You cannot divide by 0. That's why it's best that even though functions are case insensitive, be consistent about it. Right? Definitely don't do like alt caps or something like that, right? But that would result in the exact same thing. Right? Ugly, ugly, ugly. Right? Okay. Then the last thing, and then we can start doing some exercises for the remainder of our time, would be searching and sorting. So for that, I'm going to just simply appeal to RTM. Let's find out all about sorting. There is a natural sort, right? And then there's a U sort, right? And literally it means you sort it. Like it's the user-defined sort, user-defined sort, right? So to understand that, let's just go ahead and look up the PHP docs on this, right? It'll also show you that there are actually, well, no. I want the sorting, PHP sorting. I want the master php.net. There we go. There are all the sorting functions that you have available to you. There's an array multi-sort. There's an A sort, AR sort, K sort, blah, 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 blah. How each one differs by how it sorts, by either the value or the key. Remember, they're associative arrays. So do you want to sort by the keys or do you want to sort by the values? Well, look up which one you want. Does it maintain a key association? Yes or no? What is the order of the sort? Ascending, descending, natural, whatever, and whatever related functions there are. So for example, if you want just the regular sort here would be by value. It does not maintain a key association because it will rearrange stuff, and so that 0 through n minus, you've got 5 elements, 0 through 4. If you rearrange them, of course it's not going to maintain that 0 through 4 anymore. Right? It wants to put it into order. It'll do it in ascending order. What if you want a descending order instead? Then R sort, which stands for reverse sort, that's the one that you want. Right? It's also by value, and also it does not maintain the key value association. So let's go ahead and take a look at how this works before we go on to the user-defined version. Let's go ahead and create an array so that we have something to work with. Array, banana, apple, apple, apples, coca nut. Is that how you? That's cocoa nut. Thank you. Zebra. One of these things is not like the other. All right, print R. Let's take a look at it before we sort it. Obviously, it will be in that order that I constructed it in, right? Banana, apple, apple, apples, coconut, banana, or zebra. And now let's go ahead and sort it. Because this is a natural ordering, and these are strings, it uses the string ordering, lexicographic ordering. So what's going to come first? Capital A, apple, right? Then what's next? Apple or apples? Apple, and then apples. Then banana, coconut, and zebra, right? If you want reverse sort, then it's exactly the opposite, right? What if I have some other weird things in there, like 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 4, oh, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. Now what comes first? Let's find out. Now it's sorting in ascending order here. So 1, 2, 3, banana, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. What happened? It screwed up, right? It doesn't know what to do, right? So let's at least make everything a string. Now at least it'll be a little bit more sensible. What comes first now? 1, 2, 3, 4 as a string. Why? Numbers come before letters in the ASCII text table. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. Right? Which one of those comes first? No, what do I want? 123 and 12. There we go. Which one of those comes first? 12, yes. What do I want? Oh, yeah, 92. There we go. Which one of those comes first? 1, 2, 3, or 92? Remember, it's lexicographic, so 92. Ah, wait. Yeah. I expected it to go the other way because of that as well. So that's going to require some. What's going on here? Those should be fine mixed. Warning: be careful when sorting arrays with mixed types because the values can produce unexpected results. Unexpected results. It's right there in big red warning signs. So those my guess is that it is actually coercing these as integers and then treating them, then maybe coercing them back to strings. No, that doesn't make sense either. In any case, yeah, don't do that. Right? Weird, right? Sort like, keep things like things in like arrays. Don't mix types, etc., etc. Right? All right. What if I've got a user-defined type? So let's go over here to, let's get rid of this stuff. There we go. No, that's one thing I wanted. PHP sorting. And what I want is usort, the other important one. It sorts by value, does not maintain a key association, but its order of sort is now user-defined. So here you can provide a comparator, just like qsort, just like arrays.sort in Java, collections.sort in Java. You provide a user-defined function, CMP int. Right? Compare integers, a and b. Right? If a is less than b, then I'll return something negative. Right? In other words, I want them in ascending order. This is what you would get with the regular sort, but I'm showing you how to use it with a user-defined type. Else if a is equal to b, then I'll return 0. Remember the contract. It returns something negative, positive, or 0, depending on the relative ordering of those elements. And so if it's a is greater than b, I'll return something positive. Once I've got that, I can use it in usort. Now, if this were qsort, I would pass that function in by reference. I would pass in the function name here. Let's see if we can do that. Warning, it doesn't know what you're talking about. Expects parameter 1 to be an array, null is given. Well, that's not true. Oh, did I get rid of it? Yes, I did. Okay, sorry. Array is equal to array of 10, 5, 3, 2, 0, 4, 8, 6. There we go. And print it before and after to make sure that it's sorted. There we go. Oh, it's perfectly, nope, it complained about it. Use of undefined constant CMP. It made an assumption, right? CMP int, that's the function name, but in PHP, to be safe, what you do is really weird. You treat it like a string, right?
Okay.
And now it's happy. It doesn't even issue a warning error message anymore. What it was doing before was saying, well, they probably meant to put that into a string, so I'll give them a warning and I'll fix it for them, and I'll call that function instead, right? But to do it without a warning, you give it, because there are no pointers in PHP, explicit pointers in PHP, so you have to use a string like this, right? And that is an ascending order, right? If I wanted to swap these around, and this would be in descending order, right? There it is. Excellent. Yeah.
This is silly, and there's no reason you ever do it. But if you were to make a string like with the name of your comparator, and then pass it the string as a variable, would it complain about that?
Let's find out. The CMP is equal to CMP int. I think it would be okay with this. I want it to be okay with this because it makes sense. And it is okay with this. Excellent. And remember that, let's go to usort over here. You see that ampersand right there? That tells you that it's passed by reference and that it's making changes to your array. Otherwise, if you wanted to do some other weird comparisons, then you would write whatever comparator you want. Like, for example, if you were to sort student objects or, say, game objects, right, by name, then you would use something like this. In fact, as the last thing today, instead of doing an exercise, let's talk about how to create classes. Right. Do I have notes here? Yep, okay. Let's create a student class. Right. So class student. This is creating basically a blueprint. I don't remember if it's case sensitive or not. PHP are class names case sensitive. I'm suspecting that they're not. They are. Well, at least I declare a lot of class. Don't use. Whoa. Okay, this is something completely different. Is case sensitive. PHP case sensitivity. Maybe we can quickly look for it here. The constructor certainly would be a function, and therefore it would be case insensitive. Oh, okay, that was just clickbait. All right, whatever. Let's make it some private variables here. Private first name, private last name, and private, public are respected. You will not be able to access them unless you do through getters and setters. private, private NUID, right? Now, in Java, if you wanted to create a constructor, that constructor would be named after the student. In PHP, it's different. You can only have, and in Java, you can have multiple constructors. And if you don't define a constructor in Java, one will be provided for you, the default constructor. But in this case, PHP only has one constructor, and its name is construct, with 2 underscores in front of it. These are called magic methods. These methods are built in. There is a default constructor that's provided for you. It doesn't do anything. If you want to define what it's going to do, then you need to, of course, make it public. It is a function, but it's this special magic function that has a special meaning, and so it begins with underscore, underscore. Right? And then we can take in a last name, first name, and UID. Right? And we can say, I want my first name to be that first name. Can I do something like this? So remember Java? You can do something like that. Will it end up doing anything? Nope. First name refers to this first name only, the parameter. So if I want to set this first name up here to be that first name right there, what do I need to do? This keyword. Now here's where it gets weird. This dot. That doesn't work. There is no dot operator. What's the other kind of operator that you've seen in C? The arrow operator. That's how you do this. Not only that, but there's no $sign here. Okay? There's a $sign on the keyword this. You have to use the arrow, and then the first name that you're referring to here, it's a variable, but in this case you don't put a $sign there at all. This would be wrong. It looks like this. Right? Same thing for last name and NUID. Or first name, last name, last name. Get rid of that $sign. NUID, NUID. Get rid of that $sign. Right? Why? Well, this is that's C++. The arrow operator, that's C, C++. And the lack of a $sign is, let's be as inconsistent as possible. But there's your constructor. You also have another magic method. Actually, let's just go ahead and use this now. Let's go ahead and create a student. Me equals new student. You do use the new keyword, right? Right? I believe you do. Yep. New student. What was the order? First name, last name. So me, Burke, Chris, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, there we go. What if I wanted to print me? Right. So in Java, what would end up being the default toString method? Prints the Java virtual machine memory address. In this case, it could not be converted to a string. Right? Why? Because there's no toString method. Right? There is no default toString method. So let's put that in. Like construct, it begins with a underscore underscore because it's a magic method. PHP magic methods. If you want to read more about magic methods, read all about it here. There's construct, destruct, call static, get, set, is set, blah, 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 blah. ToString is what we're looking at right now. But there's a whole bunch of other magic methods that are built into the language. Public toString. I'm going to type it like that, but remember, it is case insensitive. So it's actually toString, all lowercase. But look what they do. They use the convention of lower camel casing as well, right? Even though it'll work either way. Right? Just be consistent about it. Right? Return, I don't know. I know, sprintf. Do you remember that from C? Instead of printf to the standard output, fprintf to the file output. What do you use here for sprintf? To print to a string? Sprintf. So I'll say %s, that's my last name, %s, and then in parentheses here, %s for my NUID. This last name, this first name, and this NUID. And now when I run this, that magic method has magically come into existence. If you want to, you can go ahead and add an endline character there to make it pretty. Right. All NUIDs begin with a 0, and they're all 8 characters. So you can do something like this. Hey, cool. Yeah,
Are you calling two-string print at all?
I'm calling it right here implicitly. Print me, okay.
Okay.
Me is a student. Me student. And, oh, you do have a two-string method here, so I'll invoke that and I'll take care of it for
Does
you.
it have a default? Like,
Nope, that's why it was not printing before. It was giving me an error message,
oh,
right? Could not be converted to a string because it doesn't know how. There we go, back to restoring that. You can do getters and setters. You can create a couple of strings, or here's an array of strings. So roster is equal to, this is just what I wanted to do, array. And I'll go ahead and go with a new student, me, 2 others, Johnson, Zoe, I don't know, Jane, Bob. 12 and 13. There we go. So I've got 3 students here and I want to sort them all. So let's print out the roster to make sure that I'm doing this right. Oh, not semicolons, but commas. There we go. There. It's printing out these objects. Okay. It's not calling the two-string method. It doesn't go that deep. But you can see that it's me, Bob, and Jane, right, in that order. Let's go ahead and, I guess that would already be in order, so let me put it out of order. There we go. There, that's completely out of order. Let's order it using usort. And I want to order it by last name, first name. So what would that look like? CMP student by name. I need to write that as a comparator. Fix my commas. So let's go ahead and go up here and put it up here. Function, CMP student by name, A and B. Right? I'm going to assume they're students. If they're not students, then there will be some runtime error that there is no first name, there is no last name or something like that, right? Now, can I get the first name? Let's go ahead and try this. If A's last name is less than, you can do this, but you shouldn't, but I'm doing a quick and dirty job of this. B's last name, then I will return -1. Else if, and then the opposite here, if A's last name is greater than the B's last name, then I'll return something positive. Else, return 0. Now I'm not going to go a level deep, one more level deep here with the first name. If they're both Smith and Smith, then you know how to do that. But let's go ahead and try this. Uncaught accept. Cannot access private property last name of the student class. Why? Because I made it private. All right, fine. Public. Is that a good idea, by the way? Get frustrated and just make everything public? Right? No. There's Zoe at the end, Johnson, and then Burke. So it's working, but at what cost? At the cost of a bad design. So let's make it private again and do a getter. Public. String? Function? Does it return a string? Yes, it will, but do we have type declarations like this? Nope. PHP 7 introduced this, an idea of this, but again, you have to reset. It's not the default, and you have to reset it for it to enforce it in every single file. I'm not going to show you how to do that because it's just a quick and dirty introduction to PHP. Public function get last name, return this last name. There we go. And now I can use that up here instead. How do I invoke a function? Like that. There. Now no warnings, and it'll work as before. Zoe at the end, Johnson, and then Burke. Bob, or it was Zoe, Burke, Bob before, right? But now it's sorted. So that's where you use usort by providing a user-defined type. You usually do it when you've got some sort of a class implementation here. Now on your assignment, you could define classes for games or publishers or something like that, but you don't really need to. Right? You could map a publisher name to a count, an integer. You can map a game name to a count, an integer, right? And you wouldn't have to worry about all those details or platforms or something like that. If you want to go the full 9 and define a class, go ahead. I don't think it's necessary because you've got these nice things called associative arrays to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. Questions? Yeah.
So this is kind of off topic from the classes, but in a for each loop, is there like a while, say you're having a while loop nested inside your for loop, is there a while loop that goes, like, uses the same method or doesn't use the index necessarily?
Let's see.
That uses a key.
Student. You mean like a while loop inside of it, or?
Yeah, like if you start with a for loop, and like if you start with a normal for loop that uses the index, and you would start from one index, and then you would have a while loop to continue because you don't know when
You don't know how many things are in it.
yeah, and you don't know how many times you want to iterate for like checking a specific condition inside that for loop. So it's like it's kind of similar to the it was one of the hacks we did. It was like I think finding the repeated transactions.
Okay. Oh, okay. So yeah, I see what you're saying there.
Like, so one has
For if they're all sorted already, for each one, I'm looking ahead and I see a duplicate, and so while I see that duplicate, advance both of these.
move the index.
Right. So for that, I would just use a regular old for loop.
Okay.
Right. You can always dump things to a regular old array. For example, PHP keys of an array. Array keys, values of an array. If you've got a general associative array and you just don't want to dump all the array values, throw away the keys, here are all the values, dump them, and then sort it or iterate over it or do whatever you want with it. Array values will give you just the array values. Array keys will take just the opposite. It will take all the keys, dump those to a regular old array. Both of those are going to be 0 indexed, all contiguous, so that you can use a traditional for loop on it.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's always a way. All right, let's see. Then what we'll do next time is we'll pull out some old homework and we'll do it. I started this homework in the other section, but from a few years ago. We'll go ahead and, you might have seen this before, I'm not sure, but we'll go ahead and do some isotope computations here. If you start out with a certain amount of radioactive, radioactive samples with a particular half-life, for example, strontium-90 is one of the byproducts of nuclear explosions. It has almost a 30-year half-life. So all those Bikini Atoll tests in the 1950s, right? There's still radioactive stuff there, and there will be for many, many hundreds of years going on. Although I think the background radiation has, kind of gone down. But for example, if you start out with, say, 10 kilograms in 2009, then by 2037 you would have 5 kilograms of strontium, and then you'd have 5 kilograms. It doesn't just go away into the ether. It becomes a different isotope, or it becomes a stable element. In this case, it becomes 2 unstable isotopes of uridium and zirconium, and those have some decay products or something like that until it gets down to some non-radioactive stable element, right? So what you want to do is, given a radioactive isotope and an initial amount of mass, right, compute it down until you have less than half of what you originally started with. Another one would be a suffix array, where you want to take, say, for example, science. and you want to split it up into all the suffixes. Well, science itself is a suffix of science, then science, ions, ens, and then all the way down to E. But then you want to sort them, right? So two very, very easy exercises that we'll do on Thursday. All right? All right. Yep. No questions online, so I'll see you on Thursday.